Hi, I'm Mark Alexander. I've been a landlord since 1989 and I'm also one of the founders of the Property118.com community, which is an online community. Please come along and have a look at that. I've been invited today to talk about the Queen's speech and in particular landlord licensing proposed by the Conservative government, who have just been re-elected of course. Now, nobody knows any detail about what this mandatory licensing might look like, but I do have my own thoughts, having communicated with literally thousands of landlords, tenants and letting agents. Basically, nobody wants any real meddling as such, but I think everybody agrees that something needs to be done in the UK to add more professionalism to the private rented sector. There's a very small rogue element of criminals that obviously need to be taken out, but there's also a number of amateur landlords that aren't aware of the laws and regulations, and sadly there's a lack of enforcement of the regulations that are already out there. So adding more regulation isn't necessarily a good thing, because who's going to enforce it at the end of the day? What I would like to see personally is a licensing system that's very similar to a driving licensing system. So, for example, somebody can't just jump in a car with no training whatsoever and drive it on their own down the road. However, they can do exactly that with a house. They can't drive it down the road, of course, but what they can do is they could buy a house and rent it out without understanding any of the rules and regulations. Now, clearly that can't be right, can it? So my thinking is that everybody who wants to be a landlord should at least attend a one-day landlord accreditation course, a bit like getting a provisional driving licence, just so they've got a basic understanding of the rules and regulations. That would then allow them to own property and to rent it out using a fully qualified property manager. I guess the next stage is a bit like the full driving licence. So to drive a car on your own, completely unsupervised, you have to pass a test, you have to have more training. And I think that should apply to landlords as well, so that there may be more continued professional developments, and once a landlord is allowed to rent his own properties, he has to pass that test to make sure he understands the laws, he understands things like getting inventories, the importance of deposit protection, how to actually do it, the gas safety certificates and all of the other legislation surrounding landlords, like serving notice, how to evict a tenant and all those types of things. Once he does that, I think it's perfectly reasonable for a landlord to be able to manage their own properties. If they've got a provisional licence only, then of course they'd get a letting agent to manage their properties. And I think the third level of licensing that I'd like to see is the equivalent of an HGV or a passenger service vehicle licence. Just because you can drive a car doesn't license you to take 53 people on a bus somewhere, because you're putting more lives at stake, and that's very similar to managing other people's properties. So I think people who are managing other people's properties should have a commercial licence to be a landlord who manages other properties, or just a property manager. So within that, obviously you'd expect those people to have client money protection, professional indemnity insurance and further qualifications. If that could be put into place by the Conservative government, I know that many landlords, tenants and letting agents would support that. Of course, they're just my own thoughts. We have no idea what government has in mind, because nobody's been given the heads up at this stage beyond the words, "We are looking to license landlords on a mandatory basis." So we'll have to wait and see. But hopefully somebody in power will see this video and give it some thought. Thanks for listening.